Well, it's main event times, folks. Unbeaten Mark Deluca from Whitman, Massachusetts, taking on Baton Rouge, Louisiana's Travis Scott. 10 rounds of junior middleweight action. The crowd is all fired up after a performance from the Dropkick Murphys, and John Vina has our official introductions.
Outstanding record, 19 victories, only 2 defeats with 5 big wins, coming by way of knockout. He comes from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and is a former UBO All-America's middleweight champion. Please welcome Travis Sweet Pea Scott. And here's his opponent. Across the ring, boxing out of the blue corner to my right, wearing blue and white, and weighing in, extremely 153 pounds. Undefeated as a professional, 17-0 with 11 big wins, coming by way of knockout. The United States war veteran and the fighting Proud Marine. He comes to us from Whitman, Massachusetts. Please welcome Mark Deluca.
Well, the crowd has spoken. They are here to see Mark the Bazooka Deluca, unbeaten at 17-0 with 11 knockouts from Whitman, Massachusetts. He'll be taking on Travis Scott of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who has a record of 19 wins against 2 losses, only 5 of his 19 wins coming by way of knockout. With one fighter being from nearby Whitman, Massachusetts, the other being from Louisiana, obviously the crowd is going to cheer for Mark Deluca anyways. If there was any question before this fight, the Dropkick Murphys did a 2-song acoustic set, and they said Mark Deluca's upstairs ready to kick someone's ass. I think that got the crowd even more riled up. Deluca wearing the blue trunks, Travis Scott wearing the red trunks. Deluca a southpaw, Scott the orthodox fighter. We'll bring in the official matchmaker for tonight's fights as we watch round 1 between Mark Deluca and Travis Scott. Obviously, we know plenty about Mark Deluca as he's local, and we've seen him plenty of times in Murphy's boxing broadcast. What can you tell us about Travis Scott, the man who sports a good record from Louisiana?
Mike, Travis is kind of looks a little bit like a very experienced amateur. I know he boxed for the Marine Corps team as well. He had about 200 amateur fights. You know, he's about 35 years old now, though. He's been around a little bit. Ordinarily, he takes fights on really short notice. If you notice, a couple of his losses were fights that he just took because he needed the money. This time, he had 2 months to prepare for this fight. He told me going in that he has absolutely no excuses. He's as prepared as he's ever been.
Did you say that Travis Scott was in the Marines?
Yes, sir. He was a Marine as well. He was not stationed at the same place as Mark Deluca was, but he was a Marine as well.
Because they certainly brought up Mark Deluca's Marine experience in the pre-fight introductions. I was unaware that was the case with Travis Scott as well. Deluca fights pretty much exclusively as a southpaw. Did you see Scott switch it up a tad?
Yeah, he did. You know, it's one of the things a lot of right-handers do when they're fighting a southpaw is they'll try and switch it up a little bit to try and confuse the lefty because the left-handed fighter doesn't often see a lot of other lefties. But I think that he found probably that his defense is going to be a little bit better from the orthodox stance. Now, Deluca also can switch up very effectively. I've seen him do it very smoothly.
You know, when I first saw Mark Deluca make the junior middleweight limit, which was probably over a year ago now, it's been his most recent fights at junior middleweight. This is a guy who I've seen fight as heavy as light heavyweight, and that was many years ago, mind you. But he began his career fighting as a 168-pounder, 175-pounder, given the fight, and now he's 154 pounds. I said to myself, man, how is he going to carry 154 pounds? He's doing it quite well here tonight and has so the past 3 fights. But I have to say, Travis Scott is one big junior middleweight out there. He certainly has a height and reach advantage.
Yeah, likewise, Travis has fought a lot heavier as well. He's fought most of his career as a middleweight, some up at super middleweight. He has the frame to carry it for sure. But Deluca, a good deal more of a compact guy, but certainly carries the weight very, very well and freakishly strong for his weight class.
As we have the closing seconds of round number 1 between Mark Deluca and Travis Scott, Peter Zimborn and Mark Vaz calling the action. Mark Vaz, the official matchmaker for tonight's entire Murphy's boxing card. Mark, I have to commend you. The matchmaking on these past few Murphy's boxing shows has been excellent. This one, top to bottom, there has not been a fight that was not competitive. We saw some 4-rounders earlier that were just scintillating. Even if guys were just club fighters that you don't think you'll ever see at the world stage, they put on a hell of a show for the fans who came out to see him.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate the accolades. You don't have to have 2 great fighters to make a great fight. You just have to have 2 well-matched fighters. And everybody on the show tonight I was very familiar with. Even Ray Moylett, the Irish star amateur who made his debut in the United States. He actually turned pro over in England a couple of weeks ago. But I looked at tapes of him. I wanted to make sure he was matched up well, and I thought that Matt Probin gave him a great fight.
Yeah, that was a fight we thought he was going to stop Probin in round 1. He was lighting him up and dropped him, and then Matt Probin just gritted it out. And I actually thought 1 round 2. So that was an excellent affair early on tonight. But right now we're amidst round 2 between Mark Deluca and Travis Scott. I've never been out to Louisiana. What is the boxing scene like out there? You hear certain stories.
Well, because it's on the Gulf Coast and there's a few casinos there, for a while it was kind of a hot boxing scene. Les Bonanno, one of the most prominent matchmakers in the country doing club shows, has been promoting club shows down in New Orleans and Baton Rouge for many, many years. And with the Gulf casinos, he keeps fairly busy. Certainly not the quality of fighters that you would find up north here in Boston or New York or Los Angeles, but they have a good little culture of boxing down there, and obviously Travis Scott is kept quite busy.
It's interesting. It seems like the hot spot in that area, for whatever reason, it's Mississippi. You find a lot of big fights finding themselves in Mississippi because of casinos out there.
Yeah, casinos is where it's at. It's a dream for a promoter. They'll pay a site fee to bring the fights in. The logistics are really easy. The room is in the casino itself. The hotel rooms, the restaurant, everything is there. So it's really the most practical way to do fights. Obviously, here in Massachusetts, we're looking forward to our potential casino in Boston.
Good left hands courtesy of Mark Deluca. He lands out of that southpaw stance. What brand gloves are both these fighters wearing? I noticed that they are similar in style, just different colors.
Yeah, they're Rival gloves, actually. Most likely a sponsorship deal. Rival, a fledgling company. They've been around a few years, but they were one of Danny O'Connor's sponsors for a few years there. They provide a really good quality glove and some trunks, obviously, as well, as Deluca is sporting a set of Rival trunks.
He's looking very slick tonight. Man, could Mark Deluca have a better entrance into tonight's fight? The Dropkick Murphys do an acoustic set right before he's to fight. Lead singer Ken Casey shouts to the crowd that he's ready to kick someone's ass upstairs, so they'll make this quick. And he comes in, and you would have thought that the biggest movie star in the world walked in. But no, it was Mark Deluca, who, someday might be one of the bigger stars in the world if he can keep this career trajectory going as a boxer.
Yeah, Mark is really coming along. I've been lucky to have a nice team to work with, trying to get the right opponents for him here. Ken has been most generous and given me plenty of latitude. Mark Deluca and his team simply do not say no to opponents. So much like when I developed Jermaine Taylor and Glenn Johnson early, I have the latitude to find the right guys. A guy like Mark Deluca, there's no need for him to fight South Carolina guys that are 5-50. He can fight guys like Travis Scott that are 19-2, and look at the fighters that he's fought his last 4 or 5 fights. All guys with great records that can fight, and they've given him some work. He's had to go in and work to get the win. Subsequently, he's going to learn and develop. Mark is a guy that is going to develop, and I believe has long-term potential to being a world champ.
Round 3 on its way as we come to a conclusion of round 2. Hector Bermudez in the corner of Mark Deluca. What can you tell us about the corner of Travis Scott?
Travis has actually been a guy that a lot of his career has bounced from trainer to trainer. And, you know, as I said, taking fights on short notice. The two gentlemen in his corner today have been with him now for about 4 or 5 months. So it's kind of a new relationship, but nice guys. They both seem to really love boxing. They're kind of the top trainers down in the Baton Rouge and New Orleans area, and seem to be doing a good job. If nothing else, he's fit as a cat, certainly, and definitely looks the part. He's a confident guy, and his team is very humble but very confident.
Yeah, confidence the word. I heard him on the phone with someone back home in Louisiana prior to this fight start. He said, "We're on next, and we're ready to bring home that win." And he did not stutter when he said it. Round 3 between Mark Deluca and Travis Scott. Travis Scott with some very long trunks below the knees. Not quite as popular anymore as they were, say, 6-7 years ago. Does that have any impact on the fighter? It's just a matter of style.
You know what, Peter, to be perfectly honest with you, when they were really popular, I hated them. I told my fighters, don't wear those things. If you've ever taken a pair of those and helped the fighter pack up his gear afterwards, after they're soaked with water from the fight and sweat, they weigh about 40 pounds. I don't really see the point. Smaller the trunks, the better, for heaven's sake. Why cart all that extra weight around?
Watch the Floyd Mayweather versus Zab Judah fight, which I believe took place 2006, 2007 maybe. And both guys were wearing long trunks, which are down to their ankles, and I believe were made with leather as well. So they get wet, they really, really drag on the guys.
Yeah, I suppose if they fell out of the ring, they wouldn't have to worry about road rash, though.
That's something to consider, Mark. Something only you would consider, I think, as we're amidst round 3 between Deluca and Travis Scott here at the House of Blues in Boston. How long has been a tradition for St. Patrick's Day boxing to take place in the Boston area? I know years before the folks at Murphy's Boxing were involved, where they merged 2 St. Patrick's Day traditions together with the Dropkick Murphys concerts and boxing on St. Patrick's Day. There was always boxing on St. Patrick's Day at the old Boston Garden and other venues around Boston in recent years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's been a tradition since basically St. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland. It's a perfect thing for St. Patrick's Day to happen. The Dropkick Murphys concert and fights, how much better could you get?
I always felt that St. Patrick's Day weekend was the unofficial start to boxing season. Boxing has no season, but you'll notice that on the Northeast in particular, the first few months of the year are a little bit slow because promoters are reluctant to put on shows which could be snowed out. The month of February a few years ago, as an example, was brutal. Every weekend there was a snow emergency. You would not have been able to do a show. Once St. Patrick's Day kicks in, it seems like a lot of promoters run week in, week out, and there's a lot of opportunity for these fighters to compete. Of course, this year we had snow on the week of St. Patrick's Day, so you never know.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you what, this is a pretty good fight, Peter. Mark Deluca is doing a great job in here. He's moving his head just enough to make Travis Scott miss and put himself out of position, and he's able to counter really, really well. Effective aggression here. He's landing his shots. Scott is a good defensive fighter. There was a little bit of a slip there, not a knockdown. But every time Scott looks to throw something, Mark Deluca is slipping it just enough to get out of the way and landed some really nice counter punches. I'm very impressed. He looks very smooth and polished in there.
Nice right hand by Travis Scott as round 3 concludes. Nearly 3,000 strong in attendance tonight at the House of Blues. The lines around Lansdowne Street were just insane earlier as people were trying to file in during the preliminary fights. Great raucous crowd here in Boston. Mark, not to take away from any of the action of this fight, I just want your thoughts on the performance of Gary Spike O'Sullivan earlier. Picked up a TKO win over Ronald Montez, who could not answer the bell for round 3. Thoughts on Gary Spike O'Sullivan's performance, what happened with Montez, and what potentially could be next for O'Sullivan? You know, it seems like since that loss from 2005 to 2015, rather, to Chris Eubank Jr., he's really bounced back well and maybe can find himself in a big fight sooner than later.
Oh, absolutely. You know, Spike is really he should be in a big fight. He's got the personality. He's got a colorful, entertaining style. I thought he fought a pretty good fight. Montez is a guy that has dropped Jorge Paez Jr., has dropped Wilkie Camfort in fights when he fought both of them, only to be stopped later on in the fight. But he's a murderous puncher, and Spike's defense was very, very solid in that fight. He kept plugging ahead like he does, looking for his shots, picking the body shots. You know, Spike is a lot more clever in the ring than he looks. And he did a good job. Landed some nice body shots, and apparently he had a rib injury and told the doctor that his rib hurt too much to continue.
Yeah, we were wondering exactly what the injury was that didn't allow him to continue, but now we know. It was a good win for Gary Spike O'Sullivan. Nevertheless, is there any big step-up fight for him out there that you think would be good for him as you look at the middleweight landscape? I know he's called out Triple G before on the mic. He seemingly fears no one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great to call out Triple G, but, you know, let's face it, that's probably not going to happen. I would love to see, you know, I've heard rumblings that Jermaine Taylor is going to make a comeback, and if he does, I would really like to see that fight for Spike. I like the style matchup on that.
Rumblings that Jermaine Taylor might make a comeback from a man who managed Jermaine Taylor in the early portion of his career. Something tells me your sources are better than just good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. Spoke to his trainer Pat Burns recently, and he said that he's been talking to Jermaine regularly. He's been training a little here and there. Made a few mini trips to Florida for a week or so just to get a bit of work in. And if it happens, I know they'll definitely push for it. Love to give Spike that opportunity.
Crowd coming alive here between Mark Deluca and Travis Scott. Closing seconds of round 4. Deluca picking his spots and picking them quite well.
Yeah, I think he's landed some decent power shots, and I think that Scott is looking to me like he's showing a little frustration here. Started to move and run a little bit that round, and that was a gripe on him earlier from his last fight. He came in and just, you know, he had taken the fight on 3 days' notice, but basically what I heard was he ran the whole fight. When I spoke to him earlier when I was first negotiating this fight, I told him, listen, your reputation is bad from your last fight running. If you want to fight, then I'll put you in. If you want a marathon, then go and run. And he assured me that he was going to fight, which he has so far. The last part of that round, I think he ate a few shots, and he got on his bicycle a little bit. But Mark has landed good body shots, and I think has taken his legs away from him a little bit. So hopefully he'll wear him down.
Talked a little bit about Gary Spike O'Sullivan earlier, a product of Murphy's Boxing. Let's talk about two fighters from Murphy's Boxing Promotions who fought each other tonight, Denny O'Connor and Michael Mclaughlin. Denny O'Connor with the majority decision 8-round win over Mclaughlin as he captures both the New England welterweight title and the Celtic Nations welterweight title. Your thoughts on that fight and what's next for Denny O'Connor, who is the winner?
Well, I spoke to Danny yesterday, and he plans on returning to the junior welterweight division, which is where he spent the majority of his career. He was having a little trouble making weight, so he moved up to welterweight. But he feels as though most of these full-size welterweights are just a little too big and strong for him, that his place, if he's going to have another opportunity for a title shot, is back at 140 pounds. So I thought Danny boxed pretty well. He had taken a good bit of time off after his loss a few years ago, and I thought he looked pretty decent. He boxed well, took a lot of shots. One thing about Michael Mclaughlin, he's a really determined guy. He's got a good amateur background. He's a solid guy. Is he the greatest athlete I've ever seen? No. But you know what? Every time he got hit with a clean shot, that's when he fired back and was able to land effectively against Denny. I thought it was an entertaining fight. Took a couple rounds from them to get into it, but it turned out to be a pretty good little scrap.
You mentioned him winning a world title fight at 140 pounds. He actually specifically called out the IBF champion at junior welterweight in his post-fight remarks, who, according to Fight News, is a guy named Julius Indogo. And I have to say, I have no idea who that is, and I follow boxing very closely.
Well, that particular Julius Ndogo I am not familiar with. I do know the world champion chess player Julian Ndogo, who was very popular back in the early 60s, just before Bobby Fischer's time, but the boxer I have not actually heard of.
The other two 140-pound champions, a little more prominent on American television, that would be Terrence Crawford and Ricky Burns, who could also make for an interesting fight overseas, where I think Danny O'Connor might find himself to be quite popular. Hell, he's the Celtic Nations welterweight champion. But he called out the IBF champion as we see a little bit of a stutter step from Travis Scott, almost like he was going down for a moment. Not sure what that was about.
Yeah, he stumbled a little bit. He was kind of moving laterally on the ropes and tripped a little bit. And Deluca, interestingly enough, being the gentleman, grabbed him and held it up.
I'm glad I could check fightnews.com for that information moments ago. That website has not been available all night, as is the case oftentimes when there's a big pay-per-view. Triple G fighting tonight at Madison Square Garden against Daniel Jacobs. It's a big night in boxing altogether up and down the Northeast on the St. Patrick's Day weekend.
Yeah, Triple G, I'm a huge fan of his. However, I would be willing to bet that the Triple G show didn't have as good of an undercard as we had.
I would venture and say you're correct. Sometimes the most entertaining fight cards don't happen in the biggest of venues. I'll give you an example right now. One of my favorite boxing shows I've ever attended took place at the Worcester Armory. Jose Antonio Rivera fought a guy named Clarence Taylor. On the undercard, there was a 4-round fight between a winless fighter named Jose Flaco Velasquez, who fought another winless fighter from North Carolina. They traded knockdowns in the first round before Velasquez was able to pull out a TKO win in the second round, and it was just fantastic.
Yeah, once again, Peter, it's not necessarily the best records that make for great fights. It's matching them up the right way. Any word, by the way, on how the Triple G fight came out tonight?
It is currently going, though. Chocolatito Gonzalez lost in the co-feature, which I have to imagine is a big upset.
Yeah, huge upset. HBO is definitely touting him as their next Golden Boy. Or Chocolatito Boy, as the case may be.
Even if he loses, I think that there will be fighters in those small weight classes someday that look back and thank him that he got the opportunity to open up the doors for them on HBO. You don't see too many guys that small getting premium cable TV exposure.
No, it's a great opportunity to bring some attention to a very exciting division. Deluca still pressing the action here, behind a jab. It's a little difficult when you got a tall, lanky guy and you're a southpaw. The way they line up, you're very far away. Two right-handers or two left-handers, they mesh. They're going to be much closer. The distance is there, so it's easier to land a jab. Right-hander and a left-hander, it's a little bit tougher to get in. Mark has to take that step in with his jab to land his power jab. Very, very strong guy, as I said. His jab is like most people's power right hands. So he steps in with it a little bit. He's going to be able to rock Scott with that and set up his left hand off it. I'd like to see him taking that little step in with the jab, though.
Travis Scott, for a guy with a tall, wiry frame, really hasn't been able to get too much leverage on his punches as a guy with his stature you think would. Nice left hand by Mark Deluca.
Yeah, good shot. He stepped in with that one a little bit and made his cut the distance and got himself in the range that he has to be in to land effectively. Scott came right back, trying to steal it back with a little flashy combination, which Deluca effectively blocked. Deluca back off to right-handed stance now, trying to cut the gap a little bit and tied up by Scott. Referee Jackie Morrill warned Scott probably for holding. Jackie, not a guy that ever held in his entire boxing career and dislikes it when fighters do. Tends to be one of the things he will always warn a fighter about.
Some good work by Mark Deluca here in round 5, landing some clean headshots to Travis Scott. Mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Jackie Morrell fought former welterweight champion Marlon Sterling 3 times between the amateur and the professional ranks. And nice left hand by Deluca. He's really finding a home for that here in round 5. Scott says, come on in, bring me some more. And I think Deluca's happy to oblige. Now Deluca says, you come on in.
Good round, a little bit of flash there by Mark Deluca too. Mark is such an intelligent fighter, tends to be very technically sound, but when he wants to, he can be a little bit flashy. Put his hands down, move his head, shake and bake a little bit, and really get the crowd going.
Looks like Mark Deluca is very much in control of this fight thus far. What do you think the logical step-up fight for Mark Deluca would be, where he goes on someone else's stage and tries to compete?
We've given that a lot of thought, and a lot of discussion, and it's one step at a time. This is still the level of opponent that I want to see him with, maybe for a couple of more fights. He's become so popular around here. Maybe get some TV exposure. There is a fighter from California, Nico Macias, who is likewise undefeated. He is fighting, I believe, next week, which, if he gets the win, will make him also 17-0. And this is a fight that has been discussed, and I would really like to make for Mark. 2 undefeated guys. There's a possibility that may very well be a televised fight.
Someone's O would have to go. And if not, Murphy's Boxing running regularly. Next show, May 20th at Melrose Memorial Hall, which has become a nice, quaint, fun little fight venue these past few years north of Boston.
Yeah, I love Melrose. It's a really boxing-friendly venue, not a bad seat in the house. Stadium seating all around with a little stage at one end. Really neat, quaint old building, and very, very popular. Greg Vendetti, who fought earlier tonight, lives in neighboring Stoneham and is a huge draw up there, as is Carlos Candelario, the New England lightweight champ, also a Murphy's Boxing fighter, and they will both be featured on the May 20th show.
Greg Vendetti picking up, I think, the best win of his career earlier tonight against I.E. Bruce from Albany, New York. I was expecting more out of I.E. Bruce, but Vendetti was able to drop him twice in the second round and stop him.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest with you, I was as well. I.E. Bruce is a guy that was a really good prospect at one time. He was the African junior welterweight champ, which I know people say, oh, well, the African champ, big deal. But let me tell you what, some really good, solid fighters come out of Africa, some very good amateurs. Many, many world champs have come out of the various countries, Nigeria, Ghana, and it was a very good win. This guy was a prospect once and still a solid guy, so I was very impressed. Vendetti has worked very hard and really improved.
The best Ghanan fighter of recent years has to be Joshua Clottey. I saw his former manager, Vinny Scalpino, earlier tonight and had a nice conversation with him.
Yeah. Vinny was here, and then, of course, Ike Quartey, one of the true greats to come out of Ghana, a Hall of Famer for sure.
Go back and watch the Ike Quartey Oscar De La Hoya fight on YouTube if you haven't seen it. You will not regret it. And it looks like Travis Scott tried to lift Mark Deluca up a little bit. That's one way to make a guy uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'll say. Deluca is making him plenty uncomfortable. Switching back from right hand to left hand very smoothly, kind of reminiscent of another New England middleweight who was a southpaw but switched up quite easily.
Comparing Deluca to Marvelous Marvin Hagler by any chance?
He's become a real popular guy. A little bit of wrestling in here. I'd like to see Jackie intervene here and maybe separate these guys. But yeah, I'll tell you what, Marvin was one of the only fighters I've ever seen that could so easily switch from orthodox to southpaw back and forth. And Deluca does it seamlessly. He really does. It's a rare quality. Nice body shot by Deluca. I think he definitely got Scott's attention with that. 10 seconds.
And that's going to be a knockdown. Travis Scott protests, but I think referee Jackie Morrell is making the right call.
Yeah, I think so too. He hurt him with that body shot, as I alluded to a few seconds earlier, and landed some pretty decent shots just at the 10-second mark. So, a little bit of a push. I don't know. He was trying to hold, but he got hit with some good shots and took a knee. So, I think he definitely took the knee. That was the right call by Jackie.
Eighth and final round on its way between Deluca and Scott. Oh, excuse me. Eighth round of his scheduled 10-round fight. I've had so many 8-rounders recently. Might be some moisture on the far side of the ring as Mark Deluca nearly slid as he threw that lead jab. That trainer for Travis Scott on the far side of the ring doing more time complaining to the commission and during this round, and spent more time in between rounds complaining to Jackie Morrell than he really did coaching his fighter.
I suppose he might have been protesting that being called a knockdown. But you know what? It looked to me like his fighter took a knee after getting hit with a few body shots. So take a knee, it's a knockdown.
Deluca getting more confident as he lands more clean and effective punches here in round 8. And a body shot puts Scott down again.
Fantastic stoppage by Mark Deluca. You know, I know Mark was a little disappointed a couple of fights recently that he went the distance, and this time he absolutely learned from it, Peter. He chopped this guy down a little bit at a time, landed his body shots, created his distance, landed really nice effective shots. When he saw the opening to step in and step it up and close the show, he did it in a beautiful, beautiful fashion. I'm very, very impressed by this performance by Mark Deluca.
Mark Deluca made my faux pas at the beginning of round 8 correct. It was the 8th and final round as a body shot puts Travis Scott down for the count, and Mark Deluca still unbeaten at 18-0, add 12 KOs to the record, a 66% knockout ratio for Mark Deluca. People like knockouts, people like exciting fighters. Mark Deluca's proving to be both.
Yeah, absolutely. Really impressive performance by Mark. And you know what? A ballsy performance by Travis Scott. He came in here, he tried, he didn't come in and run, he didn't come in to survive. He came in and fought Deluca just like he promised that he was going to do. Deluca just showed himself to be a much better fighter than Travis Scott is at this junction of his career. So congratulations to Mark. Really fantastic performance. I'm looking forward to him continuing to improve and hopefully work his way to a title fight.
Mark Deluca's father, very noteworthy in the world of police work. One of his best friends was a man named Robert Hayden, former police chief from Brockton, Massachusetts, who would always ask me every time he saw me, "How's that Mark Deluca doing?" He wanted to be at tonight's fight. However, a few weeks ago, he passed away of a long battle with cancer. I know Chief Hayden would be smiling tonight after that performance from Mark Deluca. An 8th round knockout win for Mark Deluca tonight at the House of Blues. Well, we saw Patty Irwin pick up a hard-earned decision win over Jose Rivera tonight. Travis Gambarella and Ricky Ford fought to an entertaining draw. Ray Moylet of Ireland had a decision win over Matt Probin. Niall Kennedy stopped Jesse Barboza to become the Massachusetts State Heavyweight title. Greg Vendetti had a second-round TKO over I.E. Bruce. Danny O'Connor picked up the Celtic Nations welterweight title and New England welterweight belt with a win over Michael Mclaughlin. Gary Spike O'Sullivan and Mark Deluca both have KO wins tonight. An excellent night of boxing here from the House of Blues. For everyone who helped me with this broadcast, cameraman Ed Anderson, Mark Vaz, I'm Peter Zimbor. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you May 20th in Melrose, Massachusetts. That's the next time Murphy's Boxing will be back in action. Have a good night, everyone.
Mark, the last several opponents have had very good records. One of them you beat over the summer, the World Oryx, you fought for the ABF title. You were more impressive in that bout. Who would you like to call out at this point? You ready to call people out? You ready for a world title?
I'm ready for a world title. I'm ready to keep on going with the line. I mean, as far as calling anybody out personally, anyone that knows me really isn't my thing, but whoever calls me out, I'm here. I'm working.
Well, another impressive victory. Let's hear it one more time for the undefeated Mark Deluca. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Murphy's Boxing, Ken Casey, Sean Sullivan, our whole game, we really appreciate you coming out tonight. Continue our St. Patrick's Day celebration. We hope to see you down at the Celtic Parade, the St. Patrick's Day Parade.